friend.
Welcome to Heavy Metal
History.
All right, everybody, welcome back to this week's episode of the Heavy Metal History Podcast. I'm your host, Dustin, and joining me as usual is Matt.
Yeah, good day.
This episode, we're going to be finally finishing out 1987. We're going to be doing November and December kind of in the same episode just because there's only like a couple releases from each month, and, might as well finish it up all in one go, and then we can get going into 1998. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed all the interview podcasts. I'm sorry we haven't been doing the history episodes. It's just we've both been busy and dealing with a lot of stuff, and the interview episodes are kind of easier to get done quick and get out than the history episodes, just because of the amount of time it takes to do all this research.
Yeah, exactly. And the time that, like being in different continents and different time zones, it can be quite kind of challenging to get both Dustin and I on, especially when it's summer here for me, and I want to go outside and play.
Yeah, don't blame
like
you.
I just got back from a morning swim down at the beach today, so I'm ready to get into it today.
Hell yeah, I'm jealous, dude. I want to be on the beach.
Oh no, it was great. It was glorious out today.
All right, so the records we're going to cover in this episode: Venom, Calm Before the Storm; Candlemass, Nightfall; and we have Black Sabbath, The Eternal Idol; and Sodom, Persecution Mania; and we're going to round it out with the Melvins Gluey Porch Treatments. So that's what we got on store for today. It's about 5 albums that came out between November and December of 1987, and once we're done, we'll kind of reassess and kind of look back at 1987 and kind of go from there. So with that, let's start with Venom, man. We haven't gotten to really talk about Venom because we skipped over it. Original black metal album, but this is Venom's Calm Before the Storm, and it was released November 7th of 1987. And so the lineup,
Yeah, exactly.
on this record, you have Kronos on vocals and bass guitar, you have Micus Hickey on guitar, James Clare on guitar, keyboards, and backing vocals, and you have Abaddon on drums and backing vocals. So 3 guitar players. Before we get into it, I will say I don't feel like, or sorry, not 3 guitar players. Jesus, what am I talking about? 2 guitar players, and this is just my opinion, but I feel like Venom never quite utilized the dual guitar players to the fullest extent, but that's just my opinion. On the production side, you have Nick Tauber, who is the producer, Keith Nickel, Andy Lovell, who are the engineers, Stuart Brown and Nigel Broad, who are assistant engineers, and Aaron Chakravarti, who mastered the record. So it was engineered at the New Marquee Studios in London in 1987. I tried to find a specific date. It was kind of hard to do so as far as like when that happened, but I'm sure once we kind of get into a little bit, it'll give us a clearer idea of like the timeline of this record.
Yeah, exactly. And even when you think about Venom, you'd always think about like they're kind of essentially like Def's version of essentially black metal. They were one of the kind of the pioneers, if you will, of that actual genre.
Yeah, so this is something we never really got into because we skipped over like their kind of initial offerings. By this point, this is their 5th album, so they've pretty much solidified like their sound and the black metal style and look and feel, but in a different way from like the more, I guess, the
more kind of Scandinavian look at it. I mean,
yeah.
you had basically Venom essentially, starting it off, and then as opposed from it going as kind of trends normally do or did, especially with kind of metal, you had England kind of starting it off, and then America trying to copy it. It went from essentially from the United Kingdom off to Scandinavia, and then from Scandinavia when it really blew up, especially in like the late 80s, early 90s with the whole mayhem and church burning stuff, it then found its way over to America.
Yeah, this has been getting brought up a whole lot on other episodes, just kind of like the origins of black metal and like the whole scene and how it feels like the genre is kind of stuck under the weight of all the bullshit and as opposed to like the music itself, which is unfortunate. But if you look at bands like this and American black metal bands, they don't really technically have to worry about that, but because they're black metal, they still kind of get lumped in with all of like the facade of black metal, like the evilness and grimness of it, and it's kind of unfortunate. I was actually talking with Agiris from Sicarius about this, and he kind of delved into that ideal a little bit more of like what an American black metal band has to kind of do as opposed to all the Scandinavian and Norwegian bands.
Well, even here, it's like he tried. Good luck even trying to become the Australian, black metal band.
Yeah. I mean, you guys.
Like, first of all, it's too fucking hot to wear all that shit.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, even then, you guys have a handful of black metal artists there, which is good.
Yeah, we do, but it's like, it's so you can't not escape what happens in the early 90s. It's basically like the analogy we always make. It's like it's the European black metal was basically just like the American gangster rap, the East Coast West Coast rivalry.
Yeah.
And it's like you look at rap music now, it's evolved so far beyond the point of that kind of stuff, but they can't get away from it. Like rap music doesn't sound like it did back in the 80s, back in the 90s, but it'll always still have its roots there, for better or for worse.
Yeah, that's true. Especially in the beginnings of hip hop, gang culture was like very heavily involved in all that, and it's something that the genre really can't get away from. So I definitely see the parallels there with that.
Yeah, exactly. And you can either shy away from it as much as you can, say it never happened. You could either embrace it, or you can just acknowledge that it happened and just try and do your own thing.
Yep. And I think Venom, by this point in time, they kind of fell in between embracing it and just kind of ignoring it and doing their own thing as well. I mean, this is their 5th album. The original title of the album would have been Deadline, but the title was changed when the guitarist Jeffrey Dunn left the band, and he was replaced by Jimmy Clare and Mike Hickey. And they both followed bassist Kronos into his solo career. So, they had a bunch of member changes before this record kind of came out. So it was kind of a lot to really put out, when you're dealing with all these like member changes to try and write a Venom record when you don't even have like most of the original members there.
Yeah, exactly. You just have kind of the brainchild of it, which is Kronos, but he alone, can't just be all revolve around him. Like it'll work for some bands, but then other bands it just clearly does not. So
yeah, I think it depends on like how much of the head person in charge brainchild it really is versus like a cohesive kind of group effort. And I don't know, I think with this record especially, it shows that probably Venom was a little bit more of a cohesive group effort more than a brainchild, because it doesn't feel like a lot of their other records. This album especially is characterized by like a lot more cleaner kind of synthetic sound when you compare it to their other albums. And I mean, it's especially the drums, they almost sound like a drum machine, and it kind of contributes to that fact. The guitar has a lot brighter of a sound, and it's distinguished.
It's easier to distinguish the bass. Yeah. That's what I found about this album too. Yeah,
and I think a lot of that change in sound is due to the addition of another guitarist and the producer who we talked about, Nick Tabor. I don't know how to say it, but and that guy, like, he only had worked with hard rock. So, like, he worked with UFO and Thin Lizzy. And, like, don't get me wrong, I mean, I'm a huge Thin Lizzy fan, and, like, a lot of their, like, harmonized leads are fucking solid heavy metal leads, if you really want to get down to it. But it really, he kind of brought that rock and roll aesthetic to a black metal band, and didn't quite work.
Yeah, I think they're trying to be almost, I don't want to say legitimize your sound and legitimize your production, but almost doing that is essentially like hurt it.
Yeah, and I mean not only that, besides like the way the record sounds, I mean they dialed back like the subject matter a lot. The satanic posturing is toned down, and they kind of go more in like the swords and sorcery, rock and roll kind of themes like that. And it's just not over the top early period Venom, and that's kind of one of the band's most important qualities.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you could always say, "Oh, it's a maturing of the sound," but I feel like that Venom, the over the top of the, just the OTT-ness of it was what Venom were.
Yeah. I mean, that's.
Now, I never particularly liked them, so take whatever I say with fucking grain of salt. I don't care. But I don't know, just like listening to this and then like hearing kind of the legacy that is Venom, especially around like black metal like people as well, and then you hear this album, it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I think a lot of the early stuff I'm indifferent to. Like I'll listen to it or check it out like if I'm in a certain mood, but I'm not like in love with it as far as like being like pure black metal, if that makes sense. I'd rather.
Oh yeah, there's much better stuff to listen to that came out even before, during, and after this period of time.
Yeah, and I think that Venom just kind of had a hand in helping along this genre evolve, which you have to give them like a huge amount of credit for. But I think the music is, it's hit or miss for me. I appreciate it for what it is, but it doesn't personally like do anything for me.
Oh, like I could imagine being like in kind of the mid '80s and seeing these guys, maybe on the second, third album cycle, and that would have just been absolutely sick.
Yeah, see, that's the problem. Is like we're kind of going into it with jaded ears. We've already heard more extreme forms of this music, so by the time you get back to Venom, it's just kind of like, oh, that's cool. Like I see what it was trying to do, what it was accomplishing at that time, and for that time, man, I bet it was fucking amazing. But now, it doesn't really do so much. I feel like this is one of those bands that I don't feel really age well in particular.
Yeah, in addition to I don't feel age well, I don't even particularly have like a kind of any kind of sentimental kind of value for it. I mean, I don't think I heard Venom till I was probably like in like say like early 20s. So there's nothing that they don't really do anything for me. And that's not to say that they're bad. By all means, it's not to say that they're bad. It's just that it just doesn't do anything for me. And it has to really stand out for me to, to like it. And unfortunately, this Calm Before the Storm, this album does not stand out.
Yeah, no, it out of all their discography, like this album, it's kind of a weird misstep on their part. I mean, we can see why. The proof is because of like the lineup changes and the producer. It's definitely got a different. It should have just not been called Venom. It could have been called Kronos, like his solos project stuff. But actually, we have a little story about that we can go into here in a second. But I want to kind of finish my point that a lot of Venom stuff, when I had heard it, I was like, okay, yeah, all right, this is cool. But I actually heard cover songs that were better than the original.
Yeah, the first time I heard of Venom was like, first time I heard of him was like through a cover song. I can't remember who, but it was like, okay, this sounds cool. And then it's like, oh, then you hear the original, and it's just this clanky, just kind of like mess almost.
Vader has an excellent cover of the song Black Metal, and it's like infinitely better than the original. And it's like, damn, man, you kind of wish Vader like wrote that song in a way. But yeah, so I don't know, this is the fifth album, so I mean, at this point in time, the band's been around for like probably a decade at the most, maybe a little bit less, judging from like when they started and everything. So kind of what we were talking about earlier, whether this should have been a Venom album or a Kronos album. I have a little snippet of an interview here that is with this singer, bass player, Kronos, and talking about Calm Before the Storm and what kind of problems he had with the guitar player Mantis. So basically the question is, what kind of problems did you have with Mantis back then, and do you regret that you did the Calm Before the Storm album after he was out of the band? And he says, I regret that the Calm Before the Storm album was done without Mantis, actually. I regret that it was a Venom album because it should have just been a Kronos album. Again, basically. After the live album, we should have fucked the Venom... After the live album, we fucked the Venom up... Jesus Christ, I cannot read.
We fucked the Venom thing up completely.
They fucked it up completely, just like I fucked up that sentence completely.
Exactly. It's all right, man. Power through.
Yeah. So he says, because Mike and Jim are exceptional guitarists who don't have the ability to, they're players, these guys, like, sort of pride themselves on what notes they can play and how well they can play it, whereas sort of the Mantis style is more about how much noise you can make out of your guitar and how far you can throw it across the stage. It was completely different. So when it comes to the Calm album, the way the whole approach came to it was I was wanting to get a bit more professional because I've got these two guitarists and Tony didn't want to rehearse enough. I thought his drums were pretty sloppy, but I really think we should have disbanded then. If you listen to the Dancing in the Fire and Rock and Roll Disease albums, it's more of a continuation from the Calm thing, and Calm wasn't Venom really. It wasn't a Venom album at all. So, I mean, that's straight from the dude, the man's mouth. He doesn't even consider this a Venom album.
Yeah, it's a bit sad, really.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of comes to the point where bands, they have this little crossroads where they change a bunch of members, and it's like, okay, do we continue with the name that we have because it's already got a built following, and maybe tarnish it with like this probably bad album, or do we just try and forge something new and like kind of start over, but use our name from the previous band to build that following? And I mean, they chose to carry on with the Venom name. I mean, even now, look, you have two different versions of Venom. You have Venom Inc. and then Venom, with two completely different lineups of people that have all been in the band. It's a fucking travesty right now.
Yeah, that to me is a bit confusing. So wait, who's in Venom and who's in Venom Inc.?
I honestly don't know. I have no idea. I just know it's two different lineups and opposing factions, and
yeah, because didn't Entombed do that? It was like Entombed and then Entombed AD.
Yes. So yeah, Entombed has that same thing. I think Rhapsody has the same problem. Like there's Rhapsody and then there's a Rhapsody of Fire. Yeah, a bunch of bands do that, man. Once you kind of get in those little squabbles and it's like who owns what part of the band, and then you're both kind of shit out of luck because nobody wins in those situations.
Yeah, exactly. It's no good.
So I think we definitely touched on this earlier, but for 30 years, this album, it doesn't hold up. It's a kind of middle of the road rock and roll album with a black metal like injection to it.
Yeah, I'm exactly the same way with you. It doesn't particularly hold up for it, and it's a shame.
Yeah, because, if the band would have kind of maybe, instead of rushing into this record, taken some time off, let everybody like maybe cooler heads, figure out what the fuck they wanted to do, and then come back and write a record, I think they could have avoided this altogether. But I mean, then again, hindsight, especially 30-year hindsight, is 2020. So what are you going to do?
Yeah, exactly. So
that wraps up Venom's Calm Before the Storm record. Not a whole lot to really go into there. The next record, we're going to talk about Candlemass's Nightfall.
Its magic will reach for your soul.
It was released November 9th of 1987. The lineup includes Messiah Marcolin, who is on the vocals, Lars Johansson, lead guitar, Mats Bjorkman, rhythm guitar, Leif Edling on the bass, and Jan Lin on the drums. Additional musicians, they had Mike Weed, who also played rhythm guitar, acoustic guitar, and keyboards. On the production side, you have the band as a whole credited with arranging and producing the record. I'm going to butcher the fuck out of this name, but I think it's Rain Walquist. I know there's got to be like a silent letter in there somewhere. He's the engineer. Mats Linfors is the mixing, and Thomas Cole did the cover art. And the cover art's fucking amazing if you never have seen it. And the cover art has to do with a lot of stuff we're going to talk about here in this record. So there's a lot to get into on this record, which is cool. There was there was some more that I was trying to find. I think we talked about this on our previous episode. Like, when I'm doing research on a lot of this stuff, there's a lot of like anniversary editions of records that come out, and in those records, there's like more information on how they like wrote and recorded a lot of stuff. And I haven't like wanted to pull the trigger on starting to invest in like putting money into that stuff yet. We probably could have got way more information out of doing that, but it's just not financially feasible right now. So, you know, maybe one day we can amend the episode, kind of revisit it and add from it. But if you go buy the 30th anniversary edition of this record, there's a whole lot more stuff of how they wrote and recorded the record in it, and it's worth it. So, but we still have a ton of information here on this record, and we're going to get into that. It was recorded at Thundercloud Studios between July and September of 1987, and then it went to be mixed at Stockholm Recording Studios in September, same month, 87. And obviously, like I said earlier, it was produced by Candlemass, which basically means that the band collectively wrote and recorded the songs, not giving credit to any one member. They collectively did it.
Exactly. They're able to get that royalty checks divided up equally.
Yep. That's why, like, when you see written by, like, lead guitar player, lead singer, you know who's getting those checks more than anybody.
Yeah.
Which I get it, because if you are the main musician writing all the stuff, it makes sense. You get more of the cut, you know?
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
So Nightfall is the second studio album by Swedish doom metal band Candlemass. Jesus. I'm just fucking mushmouth tonight, man. I don't know what the fuck's up with me. So this album came about after being dropped from Black Dragon Records due to disappointing sales of their previous album, Epicus Doomicus Metallicus. Goddamn, say that 5 times fast.
I was gonna say, yeah.
That's a rough one, man. Cool album name. I'll give it that, by adding the fake, like, I don't know, is that like fake Roman or Latin or whatever? That can't be real Latin. Epic doom metal. It's basically what it's saying.
Yeah. And I mean, for people that have never really heard of Candlemass before, they kind of sound a bit like they kind of mix with a bit of like Black Sabbath, like really kind of like Masters of Reality stuff. You've got some kind of like Rainbow from the Rising album, even some just like Metallica kind of parts in there, and they're all kind of just like, it's a big mishmash and amalgamation of all those kind of things put together, and they really it's really been kind of exemplified in this album here, Nightfall. Yeah,
it's, this album kind of was, it's got a unique sound to it. It's a classic album, but it was close to like never seeing the light of day if it wasn't for a certain cab driver in London. The story of Candlemass would have been very short, but luckily enough, he liked what he heard from the Bewitched demo, which was recorded in March 1987, and David Constable dared to sign Candlemass as the first band on this new London label, Access. So basically, this guy heard their stuff and like decided to take a chance on them, and back then it was probably infinitely harder to get your music out as it is today, with like social media and just everything being available at your fingertips. Having this one guy like find or get a hold of this demo and was like, fuck, I got to get this band to write a new record.
Yeah, again, we're talking about the whole tape trading scene as well. It's in addition to, just kids like finding out new music. Again, it's like so many bands have probably been signed off the back of their mate who got that tape from another mate who got it from someone else, like, halfway across the world. So
yeah, I mean, even right before this, like right after Epicus Doomicus Metallicus, I'm gonna have to say this a few more times.
Just after EDM.
Yeah, EDM. No, I don't want to call it EDM.
Yeah, no, it's terrible.
So they actually had quite a few lineup changes going into the Nightfall record. I mean, Mats Ekstrom had left the band because he was unable to rehearse as much as the others wanted due to like his night shift job, and so then Jan Lin was brought in, and he came from a very remote town in north of Sweden. His audition was to record the Bewitched demo, featuring the song Bewitched and the unreleased Battle Cry in Thunderload. And the second new recruit was Lars Johansson from Boden. He joined the band in the summer of '87, just prior to a short tour with King Diamond. And he happened to fall over a fence and break his arm only a few days before the tour. And so guitarist Mike Weed was kind of hastily brought in to replace Lars. And Mike Weed had actually moved down with Jan in addition before the band had decided to go with Lars. Mike's contributions, though, can still be heard on the record because Black Candles is his song, along with the various solos and harmonics in that song as well. And so not only that, the kind of biggest change to the band is the lead singer, Messiah Marcolin. If you've ever seen pictures of this guy, he has like he almost looks like a tinier version of Andre the Giant.
Yeah, that guy's fucking huge.
Yeah, he's huge. He's got like that big poofy afro. And not only that, he always wears these shirts that say Messiah says or Messiah say. It's got like bad grammar on it, but it's in nowadays politically incorrect slogans on them, like Messiah say so and so is a homo, or Messiah say fuck you, listen to doom metal, or stuff like that. It was all like politically incorrect shit of like stuff he had to say, and he would wear those shirts. So like a lot of pictures have him wearing those shirts, and it's kind of funny because they're all like homemade shirts and shit. So
yeah, he's out his printing press, just like, you know, teeing it up, so to speak.
Yeah, and I mean that's kind of what they did with a lot of their merch later on in the years too, is they would have those shirts that says like Messiah say this or says this or whatever. So basically what happened is he phoned up Leaf in the middle of the night and he sang the song Solitude a cappella while his mother was holding the phone. Messiah was so sure of becoming the new singer of Candlemass that he permanently moved to Uplands Vasby even before getting the job. And but I mean, of course, he obviously got the position. We know that. And so the band kind of plowed through the epicest songs, and Messiah sang them without missing a note. He also kind of became the focal point of Candlemass. This is kind of what we kind of talked about. Like the band had this shift with this like very, very verbose and, you know, out there extrovert lead singers. So everybody knows who he is, what he looks like. The one people remembered for sure is the guy in the monk outfit that totally wrecked every stage that came in his way. He was the one who suggested the use of the Thomas Cole painting, The Voyage of Life, as the album cover, though. So they only had to pay $250 to get the rights to use all four of the beautiful works of pieces of the art. So that's not bad. I mean, for how famous that artwork is, $250 back then, that's kind of like the average album cover, if not a lot less than nowadays.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
I think a lot of album covers now, man, you're looking at like $500 to $1,000 if it's like a professional, like, you know, like a Dan Seagrave or somebody like that.
Yeah, no, it's yeah, no, and it's it's what we've been going on about before. It is an absolute great cover too.
Yeah, it's a really cool cover. It definitely matches like their sound and kind of what the album's like overall feeling is too. When you like listen to the music, it's a good packaging. And one of the things on this record is they recorded Chopin's funeral march, the Marche Funèbre. I can't speak French. I don't know if that's French either. So that idea was also Messiah's. It became the famous intro to the uncountable Candlemass live shows and nice studio version of Nightfall. Messiah even played an important role in naming the album. Leaf was the first one who wanted to call it Gothic Stone, but Messiah didn't like the ring of it, so Nightfall it was. And the reason behind that was probably to be able to use the fantastic cover, you know. I mean, it you can kind of tell that the band has a new brainchild at this point, you know.
Yeah, they've got someone that is essentially wanting to bring them forward.
Yeah,
and put their own mark on it, even if it's, you know, I'm just going to come in here and basically just like, you know, tell you all what to do. Look what happened.
Yeah, he's very passionate about the music. He like really gives a shit about what they're making, And not only that, Candlemass is like probably one of the first bands to really kind of like start with that. I don't want to call it funeral doom, but it's like it's close to that, you know, with those really epic, almost power metal vocals, and just like the slow, trudgy, just heavy guitar riffs, you know. Not many bands are doing that. Like, yeah, you know, we talked about it's a little bit like Black Sabbath and a little bit like Rainbow and a little bit like Metallica, but you take all those inspirations and they somehow managed to make that all their own, like 100%.
Yeah, no, it's and I know it absolutely works, dude.
Yeah, and I think too, you know, like being Swedish, that in itself gives the players like a whole other unique style of guitar playing, you know, because they're not really sure. I'm sure they're influenced by people like, you know, Kirk and Mustaine and, you know, Iommi, like all those guys for sure. But growing up in Sweden, I think their actual learning how to play guitar and like the sounds that they were looking for and influences are probably way different. So that's kind of, I think, how they kind of managed to birth this new like sound into the world with this record.
Yeah, exactly, man. And again, I feel like it was when you go back before, when you are from a country that is kind of outside of the United Kingdom, outside of America, and you're putting music and you're playing music that is from those areas, you want to basically put your own touch onto it, but you're kind of more genuine about it, if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah,
you're more genuine about wanting to actually make it something unique and your own. So you'd have people from your country saying, "Hey, man, I want to learn, you know, Candlemass just because I have a connection to them because they are from where I'm from."
Yeah, and I mean, if you look at today, like all the bands that Candlemass have pretty much like, or bands that are inspired by Candlemass, it's countless at this point, you know?
Oh, exactly, yeah.
So this record was recorded in Thunderload, and again, they recorded with Rain Walquist, and they wanted to aim for the heaviest possible production. With the extreme quality of the songs, they needed a sound extraordinaire. So it started out really well. Bewitched was put on tape. Well of Souls, the name taken from the Egypt part of the first Indiana Jones movie. Dark Are the Veils of Death, Mourner's Lament, a song which actually had a totally different chorus at first, and all the others. At the Gallows End was the only song that caused any problems when the chorus didn't work. It was actually recorded with Messiah singing about 3,000 more words than necessary in that verse, sounding like early rap. But how good the material was, the mix in Thunderload didn't really make it justice. That important part was instead taken care of by Matt Linfords, a young production genius on the way up. He realized that Nightfall demanded like a more modern metal sound, and the album was given its final touch during 10 days of intense work, skillfully crafted by Matt Linfords in the Stockholm recording studio. So 10 days to mix an album really isn't that bad. It doesn't really say how long they took to record everything, but it doesn't seem, again, like very long. Like they only had a couple hiccups here and there with it.
Yeah. No, it's you can definitely tell that it's a very kind of well kind of polished, very kind of professional sounding album as well.
Yeah. One of the songs, Samaritan, actually nearly didn't make it onto the record. Mats Engstrom thought it sucked big time when it was rehearsed before the recording of the Epicus Dumicus Metallicus record, and it was actually scrapped. But luckily enough, the new band loved the song, and you know, Leaf kind of smiles when he thinks about those special days and weeks in 1987, and you know, I mean, that song, if it's the band's collectively one of their favorites, I mean, why not, you know? It's kind of interesting that they recorded a song previously and it just kind of got scrapped, and, you know, with all this new energy and new, you know, I guess, passion to really get something made, they brought it back, and they probably updated it quite a bit, I would assume, too, and like really...
Yeah, exactly. And being probably one of the better songs on the album as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a classic, man. I mean, the whole album at the very least is a classic. You know, anybody that talks about doom metal, this is always on those lists by far.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's very highly up there as well too. So
Yeah. So after completing the sessions at Thunderload, which lasted from July to September of 1987, so that's 3 months. So it took him about 3 months to do it. I guess that's a pretty long time. 3 months to record and then 10 days to master. That's not a bad turnaround.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
All the music and lyrics were by Leif Edling, except for Black Candles, who was by Mike Weed, and March Funebra. Obviously, that was written by Chopin in 1837 as part of his Piano Sonata No. 2 in B minor, OP 35. I don't know what OP 35 means, but somebody out there does who is into classical music.
Yes. It's probably known as the Funeral March. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, it's funny, dude. I got to talk with this guy, John Streeter, and he's also a classical composer. Man, that dude like blew my mind with like how talented he is, and he's like all self-taught. And I don't know if you ever checked him out, Matt, but his band is Coma Cluster Void. It's like this crazy dissonant, like just watch the playthrough video. He plays on like a 10-string guitar, and he just plays with like his fingers, no guitar picks or anything like that. And he's got a bunch of like classically composed stuff. This is an episode that's actually coming up, people. I don't know when it's going to be out because we have a bunch of them banked up right now. I know we kind of got off topic here, but it was a really cool episode. It was with John Streeter from Coma Cluster Void. Just be on the lookout for that episode because it's really cool. I had to get up at like 6:30 in the morning my time, or maybe earlier than that, like 5:30, to record with him because he was in Germany.
Yeah.
It's not a very long episode because of that, and there was like a little bit of a language barrier, but it worked out great. But we digress. We're almost done with this record. Let's get back to this one. So he was briefly a full member of the band, and you know he left during the recordings due to disagreements over his like playing style. So Lars Johansson did play on the album too, but much of Weed's playing remained on the final product. But he was never credited, at least until history came back around and they were like, "Yeah, he played on the record."
Yeah.
So another cool fact that kind of ties this in with everything. A video was made for the song Bewitched, which was directed by Jonas Ackerlund. Jonas is very famous for being in the band Bathory. And not only that, he is about to put out his first film, which is based off the Lords of Chaos book, and the internet and black metal community are like going apeshit over it because they fucking hate it. They hate that book. They hate all of the drama that it brings up. So, you know, say what you will about that. It's obviously something very near and dear to Jonas and what he grew up with. So I think he has every fucking right to make that movie. Personally.
Yeah, exactly.
So he directed that video, and Dead from Mayhem appears in this video. How crazy is that?
Yeah, that's something out there, all right. I think it actually came out in the US. I think it came out last month.
Yeah, they released a poster for it. I don't think the movie's out yet.
No. So the movie came out January 23rd of last month.
Really?
I don't know. It probably didn't get like a pretty good like theatrical run.
Yeah, maybe. It's kind of one of those like niche fucking things. Look, I feel like we've been harping on this for like 4 episodes. You know, the black metal stuff it's interesting, it's fascinating, it's fucked up. And I think human curiosity is always going to get the best of us when we look back at that stuff. So I think that story has every right to be told. But I also see why the people who are involved with it, who have grown up and grown past that, don't want it fucking dredged up and made into a movie. But that's just what happens, you know?
Yeah, of course.
So yeah, lyrically, Bewitched is a reimagining of the ancient German legend, the Pied Piper of Hamelin. And that is Candlemass's Nightfall record. 30 years, man. What do you think?
Yeah, it still kind of holds up. I mean, I don't particularly go out of my way and listen to it, but you told me, hey, go listen to this, and I'm like, okay. I heard it before, and I liked it, and go back to it. It's like, yeah, this is good. So I think it holds up, and if you're into the kind of doom metal, this is obviously your this is almost like your Master of Puppets.
Yeah, I can see that.
Kind of album. And yeah, I still think it holds up, and it is still just a legitimately good album.
Yeah, I think production wise, there are some things where like I do feel like the guitars could be heavier, but that's just my personal opinion. But I think for like the way Messiah's vocals kind of work, it makes sense for the tone to be the way it is and some of the production to be the way it is. I'm kind of in the same boat. Like, I don't really go out of my way to listen to it, but if it comes on, I'm like, oh yeah, fuck, I forgot about this. Like, this is actually a pretty good record. It's, it's a starting point to eventually give rise to things that ended up being better. I mean, if you look at like a lot of bands that kind of do the Candlemass style today, I think they're light years above. But I mean, that's just kind of inevitable with evolution of like sounds and music and playing styles. And this record is a classic by all means. I think it deserves its place in the heavy metal history Hall of Fame, or whatever you want to call it. It's definitely up there, and it started something that would go on to change a lot of metal for years to come. So that wraps up that record. And so we're going to talk about a very interesting Black Sabbath record.
Do we have to?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
I feel like, it's kind of funny. I feel like most of our episodes have been very Black Sabbath centric, considering that's what we started out with. I mean, it's inevitable. Black Sabbath, like we said,
yeah,
that's where it starts. So it's inevitable. They put out records like every year, every 2 years. So it's inevitable you're going to have a Black Sabbath record on one of these episodes in any given year.
And quite frankly, I think the kids need to know about this record.
Yeah. So this record is... Oh, man. So we're going to talk about Black Sabbath's The Eternal Idol.
Close my eyes, started dreaming. See the vision filled with...
It was released November 23rd of 1987. And so the lineup on this record. God. It is Tony Iommi on guitar, Eric Singer on drums, Bob Daisley on bass, Jeff Nichols on keyboards, a gentleman by the name of Tony Martin on lead vocals. And
literally who?
Yeah, pretty much. That's how I look at this too. And that's no slight against Tony himself. I'm sure when he was asked to do this, like, he knew the kind of shoes that he had to fill, and it was a no-win situation. But who the fuck is going to pass up an opportunity like this? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And a gentleman by the name of Ray Gillen gets a credit for the sinister laugh on the track of Nightmare, as well as lead vocals on the 2010 Deluxe Edition Disc 2. Additional musicians is a gentleman, or maybe woman, named Bev Bevan, or Bev Bevan.
Bev Bevan, yeah.
Yeah. Who did the percussion and the cymbal overdubs on Scarlet Pimpernel and Eternal Idol. The production was Jeff Glicksman. He produced and engineered at Air Studios in Montserrat. Vic Coppersmith Heaven. He also produced and engineered at Air Studios in London. Chris Tangarides. Man, fucking people's names. You guys should start a drinking game that every time I fuck up somebody's name, just start drinking.
Oh, Jesus Christ, I should start a drinking game every time one of us fucks it up a name.
Especially with like foreign names, those are the worst. It's like, there's a no win situation.
Oh yeah, anyone that's typical American. Anyone that's outside of outside of America is a foreign name.
Hey, I don't know.
Coppersmith Heaven.
Yeah.
Very foreign.
So he is the producer, engineer, and mixing at the Battery Studios in London, and Patrick Meehan was the executive producer. That right there should tell you a lot. If there's an executive producer on this record, that insists that there is meddling to the fucking every which degree that there can possibly be meddling. It's kind of unfortunate.
Yeah, right down to like the temperature of the tap water.
Yeah. I need a 69 degrees tap water from the lakes of Minnetonka, please.
Yeah, exactly.
So it was recorded at Air Studios in Montserrat, Air Studios in London, and Battery Studios in London. So this fucking thing got recorded all over the place, presumably because the band was split up all over. This is the most problematic album recording in the history of Black Sabbath. Probably, maybe even the history of bands in general. It's a pretty fucking rough story, man. So the production started in Montserrat with Jeff Glicksman producing. And at this point in time, they had the lineup of Tony Iommi, Ray Gillen, Jeff Nichols, Eric Singer, and Dave Spitz. And it ended in London with Chris Sangrides producing and a lineup of Tony Iommi, Jeff Nichols, Tony Martin, and Bob Daisley guesting on the bass guitar. The band manager, Patrick Meehan, was also fired during the recording. So
the executive producer's gone.
Yeah, so I mean, it's just like, how many things could go wrong, did go wrong, and like, you can tell like Tony Iommi just doesn't want to put the dog to sleep. Like, he doesn't want to take Old Yeller out back and just fucking shoot it, you know, even though the dog is fucking mangy and dying at this point. He's just trying. He just doesn't want to give up on Old Yeller, which in this case is Black Sabbath. And I mean, I get it, man. It's like his baby. Like, this is his fucking band as far as I'm concerned. I know Ozzy is, you know, the face of Black Sabbath, but
and at this time, you know, Ozzy's gone off to do his thing. They had, you know, they gave Dio a bit of a run for those two albums, Heaven and Hell and Mob Rules in 1980, and I think 81, 82 for Mob Rule. I think it was 82 for Mob Rules. Yeah. So about 5 years after that, I think they then put in another. They had Dan Spitz. It was Dan or David? Dave Spitz. I think he was on. There was like one or two other Sabbath records in between Mob Rules and this.
Yeah. So we'll probably definitely get to those records. There was another singer in between all of those people. It's just like, it was a revolving door of singers, and the band was
just a revolving door of everyone. I mean, keeping in mind, you know, Geezer Butler's out, Bill Ward out.
Yeah, I mean, the whole classic lineup is gone. It's just Tony Iommi. This is kind of what we were talking about with the Venom record. At what point do you just let go of Black Sabbath and start something new, being like Tony Iommi from Black Sabbath in his new band, whatever the fuck he wants to call it, you know?
Yeah.
At this point, especially at this point, like, he should not have been using Black Sabbath to kind of like coast, so to speak. But
yeah, even if you own it, even if it's yours, like, I don't know, I don't think I would. We always talk about, oh man, how cool would it have been to see, like, you know, Sabbath, Venom back when it would have back when they were kind of young. But I would love to have seen this album tour.
I'm wondering if there's.
I would just like to know what's going on. Like, were people like, yeah, for the new stuff, or were people just like, oh, it's Black Sabbath, let's hope they only play a couple of songs of this, and then they get straight on to Paranoid?
Yeah, I don't know, man. It's a weird enigma. I'm sure videos probably exist out there of this lineup playing live. I would probably like to see it the same way. Like, it'd have to be interesting, but
yeah, for people like anthropological. Like anthropological. That's the word.
Hey, yeah. I got a word right. Yeah, I agree. It's an interesting thing. It's a fucking weird ass record. The cover of the record It was supposed to be a picture of the Auguste Rodin sculpture from 1889, also called the Eternal Idol. However, the album cover actually features two naked models covered in paint and positioned to resemble the piece of art because permission to photograph the actual sculpture could not be secured. The paint had toxic effects, and the models had to go straight to the hospital at the end of the photo shoot. Despite the sleeve credits, which cites Dave Spitz as a bass player, all bass parts were actually completed by Bob Daisley, and Eric Singer completed all drum parts. The production credit to Bev Bevan relates to the few cymbal overdubs on Scarlet Pimpernel. How crappy must it be to be those two models and be like, oh man, I'm going to be on a Black Sabbath cover? Like, how cool is that?
No, I've got work.
Yeah, know that you got work, but then you find out it's not even like the original lineup, and you're like, oh, well, that's cool. It's still Black Sabbath, but then you get toxic paint put on you, and you have to go to the fucking hospital. It's just like, how many more things?
You're expecting a bunch of musos to pay your hospital bills. It's like, not gonna happen probably.
Yeah, sorry, they already spent all that money on cocaine.
Yeah.
I'm glad that they give credit to everybody involved on this record, because with stuff like this, people could have easily been left out and put to the wayside. It's just kind of weird to me thinking about cymbal overdubs. Like, what does that even entail from a recording aspect? Like, what could have really needed to been played on those cymbals that was so imperative to the song that they needed somebody to overdub it?
Exactly.
I don't get it.
Yeah, and I don't think it was the cymbals not being either in tune or being played correctly were the problems of those songs.
Yeah, and again, it's probably like a really kind of cliche thing like that, like they just weren't played correctly or something, but if that's the case and they were played like that terribly, man, where was this band at,
Yeah.
So the album was originally to be recorded with Spitz and vocalist Ray Gillen. The former was replaced by bassist and lyricist Bob Daisley during the initial sessions on the Montserrat with producer Jeff Glissman, and the latter quit shortly after their return to England. He later joined the band Blue Murder. So this is where Tony Martin was hired, and he had to reconstruct the vocals under the guidance of Chris Sangrides at the Battery Studios shortly before production ended. Most of the tracks were written by Iommi and Daisley, and the vinyl version actually states that all songs were written by Iommi. But I mean, that's one of those things that, like, who knows at that point. I assume with like how much Bob Daisley was kind of involved, he probably did help write some stuff. This album just seems like a fucking hodgepodge of like random ass people's ideas.
Yeah, it's basically just like, hey, it's like a fly. You got an album, got an idea for an album, take one of these.
Yeah, pull tab. Some of the lyrics were subsequently modified by Jeff Nichols. Tony Martin said he only sang on and had no part in writing The Eternal Idol, but nonetheless thought of it as one of the better albums of the band. I can't believe that statement for even 1 second, that he really thinks it's better than a lot of early Sabbath.
Yeah, if he thinks this is better than anything from the late 70s.
Yeah, he's just wrong.
He's lying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the drummer who did the overdubs, Bev, and the original Sabbath bassist, Geezer Butler, were actually hired to return for the 87 tour in support of the album, effectively reinstating the Born Again tour lineup. Martin in the vocalist spot rather than Ian Gillan, but then Geezer Butler backed out. However, upon learning that Sabbath had dates booked in South Africa, forcing Nichols to do bass for a few shows, and eventually leading to the hiring of Joe Burt, Bevan would subsequently depart as well, replaced by the former Clash drummer Terry Chimes, who appears in the music video for The Shining. So even on the tour, man, like he just could not hold this band together.
Yeah. And I don't know, like you'd have to be even seeing like during the tour, like what size venues were they playing?
Yeah.
How much was it costing them to even go? Like, were they showing up? It would just be a very kind of interesting kind of thing to go back through and really kind of discover.
I would have to think at this point in time, there's no way they're playing like stadiums or big venues.
Yeah, there's no way they're playing like the Hammersmith. They're probably playing like in London, the Hammersmith Odeon. They're not playing that. They're probably just
But I,
down by the street somewhere. They're not even off Broadway. They're off Broadway.
yeah, and I mean at the same time, like I don't think they're necessarily playing like dive bars again either. You know what I mean? Like they're in that like mid-level, like maybe 300-400 capacity range. I don't know what the venue situation was like in the 80s, late 80s. I'm sure it was hopefully a lot better than it is nowadays, where there's like maybe one venue in a town. You know?
Yeah.
But who knows? Like, yeah, like you were saying, who the fuck knows, man? We weren't there. This is a very unfortunate record, man. It doesn't quite tarnish their reputation as a band. I will say that. You know, it's an unfortunate misstep. It was in my opinion, lapse of judgment on Naomi's part to want to keep Black Sabbath going this long. But I don't think he really wanted to build something else, and I can also see his reasoning behind that. So it's a catch-22, but man, it's unfortunate that this record got made. It was such a fucking puzzle that never got finished.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know. I think that this album, it's very kind of easy to overlook. It's very easy to say that that it didn't happen, but I think the fact of the matter is that this did happen, and people do need to know about it. There is a cautionary tale in this album somewhere.
Yeah, I agree. That's a good way to put it. A cautionary tale of this record. It's funny though. Is like kind of the last thing here to close out this record. Iommi reflected back. I'm sure he got asked about this album a lot. You probably tend to get asked about like the worst of your discography on occasion, and he actually says that he would have liked to have seen some of the stuff on the Eternal Idol be a bit more credited, because he thinks that there's some good tracks on that album. I don't know exactly what tracks he specifically thinks are good on that album. I wish there was more to that kind of quote, but I don't know, man. I have truthfully listened to like maybe one song off this album. Even when I was doing the research, I didn't want to go back and listen to it. Like I just didn't.
No.
I know that's kind of like a hypocritical thing to do, to sit here and talk about an album without like listening to it. But I
listened to it.
Yeah, okay. So you have a little bit more frame of reference than I do, and I like Black Sabbath enough to where I don't want to taint it with whatever the fuck this was meant to be.
I mean, it doesn't taint it. It's just like, I don't know. This is a thing that had happened, and if you could just kind of decompartmentalize this into somewhere else, you're fine. And it still doesn't make it a good album. It still doesn't make it a great album. It still doesn't even make it a good album or even a fair album, to put it this way.
Yeah.
It is what it is, and you can't blame him for trying.
Yeah, I agree. You can't blame him for trying. He obviously loved the band enough to want to keep going with it, and we'll be seeing this more and more later. Once we get into later years with bands that like, drop their whole entire lineup and then are back with a new lineup or a different singer, and like how it just kind of works out better, and sometimes it works out worse, and then the band never recovers. And luckily in this case, like, Black Sabbath eventually took time off and became so legendary that it was like, once they put out a new record with their full lineup again, the original lineup, it was like, well, fuck yeah, of course Black Sabbath. It makes sense. But
yeah, there was a reason why none of these songs were played on the Farewell Tour.
None of them?
None of them.
Huh. You would think that if they were going to celebrate their history, they would have to at least, shine the light on that dark spot a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know. I've got that, they did that concert DVD for like the last show, I think, in Birmingham.
Mm-hmm.
got that on my queue to watch. I don't know if they did that on like night 2 or night 3 or something like that, but yeah, who knows?
Yeah. All right, so that wraps up the Eternal Idol there. I don't think there's really any saving that record or making it hold up for 30 years, at least in my people out there that like this record.
Yeah,
that's another
it doesn't
thing.
hold up.
So we're going into December now. We finished up November of 1987. The first record we only have 2 records to talk about on this one. The first one is Sodom's Persecution Mania. It was released December the 1st, 1987. The lineup on this record was Tom Angel Ripper, who did vocals and bass guitar, Frank Blackfire, who did guitars, Chris Witchhunter on drums. Obviously, those are all pseudonyms, hilarious as they are. It would be cool to have a last name Tom Angel Ripper, not gonna lie. Kind of sounds like a comic book character.
Exactly. Yeah, like a really kind of like.
Yep. So the additional musician on this record is Harris Johns. He did the guitar solo on Bommenhagel. And for the production, you have Johannes Beck, who did the cover painting, and Harris Johns, who is the engineer and producer. So you have a guy who fucking loves heavy metal kind of producing and engineering this record, who's also a guitar player and put a fucking sick-ass solo on one of their songs. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like Sodom were one of those bands, kind of like Creator we're talking about earlier, where it's like, yeah, like they're good, but it's like, they just don't really like do it. They don't really get me going, so to speak.
I think
I know enough because I just don't like European thrash metal.
That's what I was about to say. I think European thrash metal suffers from this weird, like, having to live up to American thrash metal, and it does okay.
Yeah, I feel like a European, because it's like European kind of playing style, European kind of ears and culture. It's really about let's just hear the notes. Let's hear as technical as we can. But when Americans just want to be like, just balls to the wall. I think that such a cultural phenomenon, especially not only just for like metal, like for music, but I think like across the world.
Yeah, I can agree with that like 100%, because it's at this point in time too. This is like the height of thrash metal, so of course like you're gonna start seeing like European bands like really try to adopt that style. Not only that though, but like this record especially, like it was heavily rooted in black metal as well. You know, they're mixing black metal and thrash metal, which is kind of 2 different things, you know. Like black metal definitely has like that speed to it that thrash metal does, but the notes are a lot more, I guess, dissonant in a way, whereas thrash is like a lot more power chords. Yeah. To put it simply, anyways.
Yeah, I can say that. Yeah, as simply as we can. Yeah.
So this record was recorded at Music Lab Studios in Berlin, October of 1987. It was produced by the band. Persecution Mania is the second album by the band, and it was released on Steamhammer / SPV Records. And kind of like we were saying, man, you know, this album is still heavily rooted in the black metal style, but it did kind of signify the beginning of a change of sound from pure black metal, which is kind of how they started out with their first record, to pure thrash metal. And I think that was the thing that kind of like helped define their sound, you know, because like I will say, out of like all the European thrash bands, like obviously Creator and Sodom stand out like above most of the other ones. But when you throw them in with like American thrash metal bands, they don't quite stack up to everything else. Hey, so you're breaking up now.
Oh no! What I was saying, yeah, it doesn't even hold candle to it.
What was that?
Oh, saying it doesn't even hold a candle. Like European.
As well as like that kind of defining Sodom sound, it exemplified like the thrash metal genre at the time when it was arguably peaked in popularity. And the album kind of bore a lot of similarities to music of other German bands, like we were talking about, like Destruction and Creator. And kind of the term Teutonic thrash was coined from this, which is kind of a cool term. It definitely gives like a heavy, like weight sound to it.
Yeah, like you're about to like put this on, and then it's like grounds is going to shatter.
Yeah, and I can see that in some of those records. A lot of the songs too, like they're fast and like they have that like raw power that it's good. That's a good term for it. So I can get on board with that. So one of the things too, despite what the cover may imply, the lyrical themes of the album are centered more around politics and war than religion. Because there's a very like religious looking record. It's got like crosses and shit on it. And This is kind of largely due to the guitarist Frank Godznick joining the band. He kind of brought a new songwriting aspect to the band that gave it a much more organized and clear sound, as well as like helping Sodom kind of carve like a lyrical niche that they still do to this day. I mean, the band, this is another case where like they bring in a new guitar player and the guitar player has a lot of ideas and it kind of reinvigorates or changes the band into like another direction that makes them stand out.
Yeah, exactly.
So
and I mean, like these guys, they stand out, especially as far as the European scene. But if they were to be in America, I don't know where they'd go.
Yeah, I don't either. That's a tough one. Anytime you have these things, it's definitely personal opinion based. I mean, I'm sure there are people that think like Sodom and Creator and Destruction are better than a lot of American thrash metal bands, and I can see valid points in either argument for that discussion.
Yeah,
but I just
and they can still pull a crowd. Yeah, like I think Creator came out here probably 6 months ago, and they sold out. They had like 1,000 people in a room. It was sick from what I hear, but and so they're still going today, and it's great. But it's I think it's just kind of like it all really just boils down to personal opinion.
Yeah, and that's kind of like the rift between European and American thrash metal, just like European and American black metal. There's going to be that rift there too. It's always going to be that way. But I mean, at the end of the day, music's music, and if you like the band, you like the band. Yeah, why not both? You're kind of depriving yourself if you don't enjoy everything that's out there.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Kind of the last thing here, the outro guitar lead in track 9, Bombenhangel, is the German national anthem. Das Lied der Deutschen. I hope I said that pretty okay.
Yeah, that's correct, yeah.
So they're obviously very proud of their German heritage and not in the,
Well, even then, I mean, at the same time, granted, yeah, like the Berlin Wall was still up at this time.
Yes. So that's another important thing to kind of remember is like they're living in a Germany that's divided. They have like a lot of political strife going on, and they're kind of in the center of it. So Sodom is kind of like the product of that, they're a product of all of this like bullshit war and political ideologies of, dividing an entire state down the middle. And this is what you get. You get these angry thrash metal bands that this is how they chose to, I guess, protest in a way.
Well, I don't even think it's probably even about protest. It's about how to basically get your kind of frustrations out in a kind of good and positive way. And that's what we always talk about here. It's like, no matter what you think, ideologically, whether you're on the right or whether you're on the left, or whether you're kind of straight down the middle, or whether you're fucking so far left you end up turning right. If you just choose to express, you have something, you want to have a message, and you do it kind of in a positive way that brings people together and can even basically change people's minds, depending upon what way you go about it. Mm-hmm. That's all the more good.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it, man. Unfortunately, there wasn't a whole lot of information I could find on this record, so that kind of sums up that Sodom record. And to be fair, I think it's only their second record. The band continues to evolve and kind of get better and a little bit different with every record they put out from here on out.
Yeah, and they're still like more relevant today than some of those like American bands.
Yeah,
that we've talked about are.
I agree. Yeah, and for 30 years, this album's okay. It's this is the problem. Is like sometimes you look back on stuff and you're realizing like me personally, I'm looking back on this with like jaded ears, like we kind of talked about.
Yeah.
It's cool for what it is, but it doesn't grip me like it should. Not like if I was living in October of 1987 when this came, or excuse me, December of 1987 when this came out, and I would have been like, fuck yeah, this is like fucking awesome, like, head banging, like whatever I would have been doing if I was around at that time. It just doesn't have the same punch, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's a shame, but but for people that like it, they like it. That's great.
Which is weird as fuck, man, because like Power Trip, like they're along the same vein, man, and I will go hard as fuck listening to both Power Trip records. Like I fucking love that band. But they're not really like playing anything new if you really think about it. They're just playing like really cool thrash metal.
Yeah, exactly. And they're kind of bringing that kind of like 80s vibe to a modern day audience. And that's all the more better. Do whatever you need to do.
And it just somehow works. That's the weird thing. Like it doesn't ever sound derivative of anything else I've heard. So like when I'm listening to a song, I'm like, oh, this sounds like an Exodus song, or this sounds like a Metallica song. I mean, don't get me wrong. They do have songs that like delve into those territories, but not to where I'm like comparing them all the time. It's like, fuck yeah, this is a Power Trip song.
Exactly. Yeah.
But yeah. I digress. So getting on to the very last album here, the Melvins Gluey Porch Treatments. Now, I think some people are going to be stoked about this record being in here, and other people are going to be like, why are you talking about this band? They're not metal. And I would have to disagree with you based on how fucking heavy this record is.
Yeah.
Before we even get into like stuff about the record, the guitar tone and bass tone on this record is like so fucking heavy. You like maybe vocally and like how the songs are played, like it's not very metal. It's like more punk than anything. But goddamn, dude, if you listen to that guitar tone, it paves the way for a lot of bands that like make that really like overwhelming heavy doom metal that we hear today, like fucking Primitive Man, or this band that was out a couple years back called Harp, or the list can go on and on. Like really just overdriven, bass heavy, fucking elephant stomping riffs. That's what this record is.
Yeah, and the Melvins are something that like even to this day I don't get.
I get it, man. Like it's a weird one to kind of put in here as far as like talking about heavy metal, but because they do delve like into like hard rock territory at times too, but you just can't deny like how much of that like sludge metal they really, really fucking started.
Oh yeah, exactly. When you talk about these guys, like you can't help but then think about like Kai Lesser, Iron Tusk, Mastodon, or early Mastodon. It's these guys are essentially at kind of the forefront of. They were making something new.
Yes, and that's why I wanted to include this record, because I feel like it stands out from a lot of typical things that were out at this point in time. And not only that, it came out at a weird time where it was like it got lost in like the end of the year shuffle and kind of ends up getting overlooked a little bit. An exact release date is so fucking hard to find. It was either released in November or December of 1987, depending on like whether you're looking at like the vinyl release or the CD release. It's kind of all over the place. But the lineup on this record: Matt Lukin is on bass, guitar, and vocals. Buzz Osborne. If
The guy with the big hair.
Yeah.
If you've never heard of the Melvins, but know of them.
Yeah, if you've ever seen this guy, you would know him immediately. He is the vocals and guitar, and Dale Crover on drums. Dale Crover played in Nirvana for a little bit, at least, before Dave Grohl took over.
Yeah, I think he was on the. Yeah, wasn't he on the first album?
Yeah, he was on Bleach. So Bleach came out.
Came out like 89.
Yeah, so like 2 years after this. Yeah, and Bleach. I think me and you and we talked about this at the bar when we were with everybody with Dillinger. We were talking about Nirvana. I was like, no, man, go listen to Bleach and then go listen to the song Negative Creep. That song's heavy as fuck, dude.
Yeah. I don't think I was around for that, but yeah, that song is fucking heavy as all hell.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. We're not ever going to talk about Nirvana on this. They're nowhere in the conversation of heavy metal except for how grunge destroyed heavy metal, and that's like a whole nother conversation in itself. But
I also like grunge and I like Nirvana and all that. So.
Yeah, same here.
Fuck.
So additional personnel on this record. Mark Deuterom is the producer and did the mixing. Carl Herlofson did the engineering and mixing. Dave Musgrove did he was the second engineer, and Victor Hayden did the original artwork and was the executive producer. Probably not like the executive producer in terms of Black Sabbath.
Yeah.
It was recorded October of 1986 at Studio D in Sausalito, California. I used to live kind of close to there. Not terribly, but fairly. And it was mixed at Starlight in Richmond, California. So this is obviously the band's debut record. It was originally only released on vinyl through Alchemy Records in 1987. It's obviously been re-released a couple of times with various additional tracks. The original version, though, features 17 tracks and clocks in at about 33 minutes and 48 seconds. While some of the re-releases feature almost as much as like 29 tracks and a playing time that exceeds like an hour.
Yeah, but keep in mind also, like, tracks normally, like the average kind of length for a track here is about 1:50. So
yeah, they do really short songs, and I mean there's some long songs too. It's but I think obviously we're not talking about re-releases here. We're talking about this release, but with re-releases, I find it hard to believe that they were sitting on like 29 songs and they were like, we'll go with these 17. I think these are all afterthoughts or like live stuff, but that's another conversation for that kind of stuff. And I mean, we were talking about this earlier, man. If you look at the music on this album, it's fucking filthy, raw, energetic, hard rock sludge metal with even like a tinge of like hardcore leanings in there. It's primal and simple yet effective and catchy.
Yeah.
I mean, especially with like a 3-piece lineup, man, guitar, bass, drums, and vocals, it even gives it like that garage sound, and the music features that special raw and tight energy that only like really a 3-piece lineup can create, man. And the music is predominantly based on those ultra heavy guitar riffs and heavy beats, and that's kind of what I was talking about, why this album needs to be included in this, because you can't really go wrong with this record. It's the sound production's a little raw, it more or less sounds like the album was recorded in someone's garage, but I mean that raw kind of live energy suits the music well.
Yeah, no, exactly. But yeah, like even if the Melvin sounds like something that I should like, for whatever reason, I just don't get it.
Yeah, no, that's fair. It honestly took me a while to get into them. I had a friend in high school who was super into like bands like the Melvins and like Dinosaur Jr. and stuff like that, and like I was never like super into it, but when he would play it, I'd be like, yeah, this is all right, but then like it just, for me, it always takes that one song, whatever song that may be, to like really get me into it, and I'm like, oh, now I get it, like I get the band now.
Yeah.
And sometimes it takes me like years to really like catch on or do that. There's a band recently that happened with, where like I've been trying to get into their music, and then I finally like I heard that one song and I was like, oh, this is it. This is why. And I can't remember.
And then you go back and you listen to like other like songs that you previously like dismissed, and it's like, no, I get it now. And these are actually like legitimately good songs.
Yep, exactly. And I think that's just what happened with me and the Melvins. And, you know, I finally heard that one song that was just so stupidly heavy, and I was like, oh, okay, that's why I should be into this band. And, you know, this album's interesting to listen to, man, in retrospect, because, you know, while it may sound like a little immature and raw today, it, like we were talking about earlier, it's probably like so fucking different back then. It was different from every other thing coming out at that time. And it's kind of not without reason that the Melvins often kind of like Candlemass, you know, they get called the forefathers of like sludge and other things like that. And it was definitely ahead of its time. And it foreshadowed like, you know, like drone, even a little bit of drone rock, like Earth and Sun O.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And even then, like Nirvana was even inspired by the Melvins, obviously. Like Buzz and Kurt were like good friends. And
yeah, exactly. I think like some I think the song "Fly Eyes" of this album was actually saying he was actually used in like a lot of kind of Cobain documentaries as well. So yeah, they were all good mates. Yeah.
So yeah, unfortunately, again with something like this, short of like going straight to the source and getting these guys on the podcast, there wasn't a whole lot of stuff to really find out, unfortunately, about the recording and writing aspect of it, which is what we always kind of like to go into and talk about. So either way, I think that you should give this record a listen if you've never really been into the Melvins. I'm not saying it's their best record, because it's definitely not, but it's definitely a pretty goddamn good debut record. I will say that.
Yeah, no, I remember listening to this a month ago when you said we were going to talk about this. I haven't put it on since, but it actually, the way that you talk about it is wanting me to go back and keep listening to it again.
Maybe don't even listen to this album. Maybe check out another album.
Yeah, I might even put on Houdini after this.
Yeah. So that wraps up 1987, man. Like, what do you think in a nutshell? I mean, I know I don't have the whole list in front of us of everything that we covered, but I mean, there was some solid stuff in 1987. I mean, King Diamond put out fucking Abigail and Anthrax.
Yeah, oh, exactly, man. And you had I'm just trying to think because like this has been a lot of kind of stuff that's been out here. I'm just going to get the list in front of me. I know. Oh, you should know what came out. It's your show, but it's like, fuck you. There's so much stuff I need to know.
Yeah, this is like a year of us doing this. Like, we're finally done with our first official year, because I think we finished up like 1980 like pretty quickly, because there wasn't a whole lot of stuff. I could be wrong about that. I have to check our like notes, but I mean, you know, they're like, okay, so King Diamond, Anthrax, Candlemass, Sepultura, you know, on the last episode that we talked about, Metallica. I think we talked about, was it And Justice for All? Yeah.
No. I think that was 88, because I think we may have talked about that with
Derek.
Well, with Derek, yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, man. I mean, dude, there was some solid stuff. I don't know how it holds up in terms of like the 80s collectively. That might be something we should look back upon, because this is like nearing the end of the 80s. Like, the 80s are almost over. If you look at from where we started with Black Sabbath, I realize we did skip like 6 years, so it's hard to have like a gauge, and we're going to be skipping like another like 10 years once we start 1998. But I think by 89, like, dude, there's some solid shit that comes out in 89, if I'm not mistaken.
No, I'm going through the list now, dude. There's still albums that, like, because we started talking about it, I've gone back and really started even listening to them like just regularly. I mean, granted, we got Appetite for Destruction. Oh yeah. I know you hate the Guns N' Roses, but I love that album.
Yeah. That's
we had Scream Bloody Gore by Death, and Under the Sign of the Black Mark from Bathory.
Yep, those are good records.
Also, there's one album we forgot to talk about, but it can basically be summed up in basically kind of 2 points, and that is Once Bitten by Great White.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I kind of fought with that one a little bit. Like, they're like so far on the edge of metal that it's like almost just rock music to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I kind of just like I didn't want to put it on there.
Yeah, but basically the story of Great White is they decided to have a bunch of indoor fireworks and people died.
Yeah, that's another thing. I didn't want to go into that either because that's a very unfortunate situation. Me and Jamie actually like got into that like really briefly when he was on the podcast.
Yeah, about 100 people, and including one of the guitarists, died because of that.
Yeah, fucking tragic.
How fucking stupid do you have to be?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
but 1987, man, not a bad year by far. I mean, pretty solid stuff came out. I know I was just born in 1987, but if I was, say like 15 in 1987, I'd be satisfied with this year in music.
Oh yeah, I'd be having my kind of like long hair, my denim jacket, my Canadian tuxedo, the denim jacket with the denim jeans.
Yep.
I'd have my big patch from like some obscure, like either my like Manowar or like Testament patch.
Oh, Manowar.
Yeah, come on, and I would have been great. It would have been like shotgun and beers.
Yeah, it would have been shotgun and beers too.
Yeah.
At 15.
Oh no, yeah, 15.
Heavy metal parking lot. That's something we need to talk about eventually. I don't know if you.
That is true.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, I've seen it. I saw it probably like 10 years ago. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, it's been a while for me. So, all right, guys, that officially wraps up 1987. It took us about a year to do it, but I'm really proud of
By
the
God,
work. I can only fucking just wait. 1998, like, man, the research that I've been doing, and I've been taking like a different approach to, where like I've been reaching out to some bands and trying to get like email correspondence going with them to get more information if I can't get them on the podcast. I'm really trying to go into it to like really get some info. Some of them it's fucking hard. Like, I've come across records where there's literally nothing about the record except the release date, and it's just like, well, how do we talk about this?
Yeah, exactly. Without just giving it just a straight up review, it's like, how are we going about it?
Yeah, and I think it's important to us that we don't want to like try and review it, but sometimes, man, it's hard, and we can only do so much. But once this episode is posted, I'm gonna make like a mega thread with all the 1987 episodes in it. And we would love to hear your feedback and comments on everything from the year. We have a comment section now on the website. You can literally comment on anything. Our reviews, our episodes, whatever. I mean, that's all we got on there. But pretty much you want to leave a comment telling us that we're dipshits, you can do that. Whatever you want to do, it's up there.
Yeah.
So I don't know when this is going to go out. But until next time, guys.
Yeah, just kind of thing. If this does go out before Saturday, the 17th of February, I will be going to see Fit for an Autopsy of Muir and Die Out is Murder down at the Metro. If you see me, let me know.
Wait a minute.
Wait, what do you mean? Wait a minute.
Fit for an Autopsy is still a fuck... Oh, wait, I'm sorry. I'm thinking of a different band. Or am I? No, I'm thinking of a different band. I'm sorry.
Oh, are you thinking of Annotations of an Autopsy?
Yes. That's who I was thinking of for a second.
They were so fucking terrible.
Yeah, I was like, wait, they're still a fucking band and they're touring with Amir? That kind of threw me for a loop for a second. I was like, hold up. No, Fit for an Autopsy is pretty cool. I dig their shit. Amir, not so much.
Yeah, no, I actually like Amir.
That's fair.
We played
a couple shows with them when we were touring, but yeah, it's stories for another time.
It's all in the past, man.
Yep.
But yeah, no, I'll be going to that. If you listen to this and you're also going to the Sydney date, come hit me up, say hi. We'll get beers.
Yes. Matt will buy lots of beers. No,
and you know that I fucking have done that before.
As always, guys, thank you so much for listening. If this is your first time checking us out, if you can, take a few minutes, go to iTunes, leave us like a review and kind of rate us. That would help us out a lot. You can find us on Google Play. Obviously, if you go to the website, heavymetalhistorypodcast.com, literally everything is on there. There's nothing you cannot find from that website. You can follow us on all forms of social media and interact with us. I'm a little more active on it than Matt is, but that's...
Yeah, if you hit up our Instagram thing, it's at Heavy Metal History. You should be able to find all of our Instagram stuff there.
Yeah. All right. And until next time, cheers, cunts.
Cheers, guns. See you around.
Be excellent to each other.
And... Audio!